Welcome, welcome, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Shayla. Hey, Rachel.
Hey
Also,
there.
so nice to see familiar faces. Hi,
Hi,
Ashley and Floyd.
Floyd.
Hey.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Ida. What's up, Stephanie? It's good to see you. All right, as folks are getting settled into this new space, I know some folks in the room and don't know others, which is really exciting. And I would love you to throw into the chat, what sort of facilitation do you do? So if you are here, I am assuming that you are some sort of facilitator. And so I am curious for you to share just a little bit about what sort of facilitation do you do, or in what settings are you usually facilitating? Go ahead and throw that in the chat. Okay. We've got facilitation for educators, strategic planning, transformation, program design, delivery, business facilitation, DEI facilitation with corporate clients, nonprofits. All right, we've got like a good span of all the different places we all facilitate. Meetings in unions, teacher, community building. Very cool. All right, yeah, keep that going as folks join in. So for folks who are just joining in, we are just sharing what sort of facilitation we often find ourselves doing in the chat. And if you have your video on, I'll be able to see your answer to this. I would love to know, on a scale of 0 being none at all and 5 being quite a lot, how comfortable are you being flexible in your facilitations on a scale of 0 to 5? Okay, I'm seeing 4, 5, 2s, 3s, 2s, 3s. All right, kind of middle. Okay, all right. So anyone in the 4 or 5, we might be like looking to bring in some of your expertise towards the end if we have. And for people at the 2s and 3s, I hope that by the end of the session, we'll be able to maybe go up a notch or half a notch. It's a big scale, 1 to 5. So if I can jump you a whole number in 90 minutes, that'll be awesome. Okay, I'm going to kick it over to Anna Maria to just do a little bit of welcome to Butter, as Butter might be new to folks and familiar to others. And then we're going to dive right in.
All right. Thank you so much, Meg, and welcome, everyone. My name is Anna Maria. Those of you that I haven't met before, I am leading this beautiful community project here at Butter. And if you are using Butter for the very, very, very first time, you're in for a treat, because we are going to use and see a lot of features in today's session. Welcome to the all-in-one tool for delivering collaborative, engaging, and fun virtual workshops. I leave some relevant links for you in the chat if you'd like to explore more and maybe book a demo if this piques your interest. And I do have to mention that this session is being recorded before I jump straight into it and I forget about it. And we're going to make it available for the Butter community members and post it on YouTube. If you'd like to keep your camera off because you feel more comfortable this way, that's perfectly fine. And I am super, super excited, as I guess everyone in the room is, to welcome Meg to host the session for our community. And I think we all know who Meg is. Nevertheless, I feel that an intro is due. She's a professional facilitator, geek, like she likes to call herself. And obviously, I think we all know her as the founder of Facilitator cards. And I love the story of Facilitator cards that came out of the result of a happy accident, right? Of being unprepared or feeling unpreparedness in a workshop. And it turned into this amazing product that we all like, a pocket-sized activity library for us to design our workshops. And it's been used by people all over the world. Now, I love that Meg really likes to share her passion for facilitation with the world. And that's exactly why she's here to share her tips on how to pivot and flex and shift our facilitation mid-workshop. And thank you so much for accepting my invitation, Meg. I am very excited for the session and I can't wait to dive right into it. So the floor is yours. Take it away.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Anna Maria. So I know quite a few folks have been in sessions with me before. If you haven't, and you're like, I don't know Meg, and I don't know facilitator cards, we will get into both of those things later. The things to know about me is that I've been facilitating for over a decade. I am a big facilitation geek, and I started doing this work doing social justice facilitation, which is still where a lot of my heart is. And in the last few years, I've really moved into this space of helping people skill themselves up as facilitators, and really dived into working with folks on facilitation more specifically, and less content-based facilitation. So I have become pretty fascinated about this idea of being flexible in our facilitations. It feels like something that as facilitators, all of us know we have to do, but we all have varying degrees of comfort with it, that we go in with a plan and an agenda, and then it often just gets completely disrupted. And as Anna Maria mentioned, facilitator cards came out of maybe the most dramatic version of that I've ever had to deal with, and we can get into that story a little bit later. So yeah, today's session is really going to be introducing some of the key points to me that help me be flexible in my facilitations, both virtually and in person. We are going to be talking about and kind of setting ourselves into this space that we're sharing today of butter, and kind of how we could be flexible in this space, which I think will apply to all online spaces. And anytime we can make it relevant for those in-person sessions as well, we will do that. I think everything that we talk about today transfers over there. So we are going to jump into a little bit of interaction and engagement, and we're going to use Miro to do it. So Miro is an online whiteboard tool. If you've ever used Jamboard or Mural, it will be similar and different. And that's what we're going to do right now. So if Anna Maria can open up the Miro, you all should see this as well. So what we're going to do for the beginning is I would love you to navigate over to this map. And what you'll need to do is in the top left of your Miro toolbar here on the left side, you're going to need to select the little mouse pointer in order to activate your controls. And what I want you to do, some people are already doing it, is I want you to zoom in here, grab a pin, and drop it onto the map wherever you are tuning in from. So grab a pin on the map and see if you can drag it to approximately where you are in the world, or in the world or in the country. For those of us tuning in from the US. It's also a little bit of a challenge for us in the US to realize where the heck are all the states when we don't have the borders, and we can only use the natural landscape to figure that out. Awesome. So we've got folks from all over the US. We've got someone down in Brazil. We've got Anna Maria over here in Portugal. Very cool. So we're going to be using Miro a few different times during the session today. And the main thing that you will be needing to do is being able to drag and drop, which we're getting a little bit of practice here. Again, if you're like, I cannot figure out how to activate this button, I just am clicking around, you want to, again, the toolbar on the left-hand side has a small little mouse icon at the top. And when you do that, you'll be able to drag and drop one of these pins. So we've got someone floating up here way above the map, and if you are over there in Antarctica, that's great. Can anyone share a link to the Miro board? So I don't know, Anna Maria, if you want to answer that question in the chat, but it should have popped up in your butter, like in the main window of butter for you. If that isn't true, we can also share an external link, but it should kind of be featured right here in butter, which is one of my favorite things about butter, because it is you're able to do this without having to open a separate window. All right, we got a couple people from the UK tuning in. Awesome. Okay, so now what we can do is we're going to move over to the right, and you're going to see this wall of sticky notes when we move past Australia, and we'll see this wall of sticky notes. And my question to you is, what do you find most challenging about being responsive and adaptive when you're facilitating? And what I'd love is if you can access one of those sticky notes, just click on it and start typing. And I would love you to be as specific as possible about what you find challenging. So grab a sticky note and write a response to that question. What do you find most challenging about being a responsive or adaptive facilitator? Okay, I'm going to read a few of these out. If you have finished your typing, you can also zoom around the board to read as people are finishing up. If you want to make sure that you don't move a sticky note, but that you're still able to move the board, if you hold down spacebar, your cursor will turn into a hand, and that hand will not move the stickies, but will allow you to move around the board. So I'm just going to read a few of these out as people finish up writing. Your zoom, Rachel, is going to be either if you're on a mouse, it's going to be your scroll bar. And if you're on a trackpad, it's going to be pinching, I believe. There's also a way to do it in the bottom right corner of Miro. There's a percentage in the bottom right corner. If you hover over that, there's a zoom in, zoom out toggle there. Okay, so keeping focused on the meeting attenders. Yeah, so keeping our presence for our participants is a challenge. Defining the duration of the meeting in advance. Okay, yeah, if that isn't defined, that is a big challenge. Juggling the technical stuff while keeping facilitation smooth. Yes, you are watching me try to do that right now, where we're instructing on the technical stuff while also trying to move through the facilitation. That is absolutely a challenge. We've got managing time a couple of different ways on here. Let's see. There are days where we feel less capable of being flexible. So like if we're having a bad day or if our attention is being brought somewhere else, then that is hard to be more flexible and to like have that kind of adaptability. Okay, remaining motivated when people aren't engaged. So if you are planning to do a lot of facilitation and people aren't at that facilitation level, that can be super challenging. I get nervous about the timing when we'll get to everything in the agenda. Yeah, timing is a big one. Keeping everyone engaged when the group's needs don't match the organizer's goals. Yes. So that I think is something that all of us have probably experienced at one time or another, is that misalignment between what we thought we were going to do in the room and what is actually needed when we get into the space. So let's take a pause on this Miro. If you are typing, I'm just going to have you finish up so we can have your notes on here. And I want to kind of zoom in on and talk more about this idea of what do we do when what we thought our plans were going to be really changes direction. And it's obvious to us that we need to change direction. Like, what are the things that we can do at that time? So I'm going to close the Miro now for folks. So if you are still typing, know that we hopefully captured your thoughts before we left. And we're going to talk more about like, what are the things we can do as a facilitator to prepare ourselves for those inevitable times where we need to shift, plan, or pivot, shift, flex, or pivot our plan. So the first thing that I realized when I was facilitating that was a really crucial thing for me to have like a firm grasp on is to understand what were the supplies that I had at my disposal to use as a facilitator. When I'm in-person facilitating, this means what is the room setup? What is the, what are the physical supplies I have available? Do I have sticky notes, paper, pens, all of those sorts of things? When I'm online, that is, what is the technology allow me to do? So that is to me, like, that's what I think about when I think about knowing the tech, is just what does the technology allow me to do? And that is kind of like my supplies for the day. So one of the questions that I have for all of you is, have you ever been to a Butter workshop before? Have you ever used this platform before? Because if we're thinking about like facilitating on Butter or facilitating virtually just in general, do we know the supplies of the technology that we're using? Do we know all the capacities of Zoom or Teams or Butter that we're actually facilitating on? So I would love you to answer this question. Have you ever been to a Butter workshop before? So that we can know how many folks are in here for the first time? Okay, for me, this is my first time facilitating live on Butter, so I am pretty new, even though I've spent some time. Okay, so we've got about 20 of us are here for the first time, and about 10 of us have done this before or have been to a session before. Awesome. So for the folks who have been here before, this might be a slightly easier question for you. And what I would love to do is invite folks to, you can both respond in the chat, but I would also love to hear some voices in the space as well, if you would like to unmute and share out loud. What are the supplies we have at our disposal on this platform? So like, what are the different pieces of the technology that we can use when we're on Butter to facilitate? This is not a trick question. This might be obvious. We've done some of them already. But yeah, I would love you to know. Okay, we've got chat function coming into the chat. Very meta, Ashley. Love it. Barbara, go ahead. I see you. Unmute,
okay.
Barbara.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I've just used one of them, which is the having a comment, having a question, or having an idea. That's really useful because it also creates a little line of people there for you. Another thing that I absolutely love when it comes to Butter is the ability to peek into the breakout rooms without having to actually enter them and interrupt the conversation. That is fantastic for me because I work as a teacher and I'm a language teacher. So every time if I enter the room, I interrupt the conversation. That's the one thing I don't want to do. And that's my contribution.
Love it. So we've got a couple of different ones, Barbara, from what I heard, just to echo it back. So we've got breakout rooms. You can do breakout rooms in Butter. You can also peek into, and I agree, that is like a specific tool, facilitator tool. So you can peek into your breakout rooms to see if people are talking. You can like see their conversations without hearing them so that you can kind of observe and see if there's still energy flowing in there. We've got, and then the queue function that you mentioned. So there's a button on the left-hand side where there's like a little hand. You can also hit Q and then the number 1 or 2 or 3, and that will allow you to create a stack. Some people might be familiar with that term, a stack of people who want to like add a comment or a question. People are also continuously clicking this reaction button right now, which is popping up. And I think if you get enough of one type of reaction, it'll do this like major reaction in the middle, which is kind of another feature. So we've got the chat function, more expressive reactions, the agenda tool. Yes. Awesome. Okay. Are there any other tools that we haven't named yet that we can do in this platform and generally on online platforms? We've got notes from Barbara. Yes. So there's the ability for you to make private notes if you hit the note button underneath the chat on the left-hand side. So if you open that up, that's like a private little notebook for yourself. I think that's really handy and I like that function. And the notes get sent to your email. We're all learning so much over here. Okay. Any other functions that people see or that we've already used in Butter? You've experienced 2 we haven't named so far. Okay, we've got Miro, which is integrated. Polling function, that's the one I was looking for, Bryn. So yes, so there's polls, and then there's the integrations. We've used Miro. There's also Google Everything integration, like Google Docs and Slides and all that stuff. And then there's also like a YouTube integration. Okay. And you can set up all of this stuff kind of beforehand. You can set up the agenda and the breakout rooms ahead of time. Yes, Rachel, I see you.
I also really liked just the fact that you could take your own photo, like as you came into the space. That was kind of fun. So it's like your actual photo from today, not some photo from 6 years ago that you still have in Teams or whatever.
Yeah, totally. You could even use that as a prompting tool, right? As a facilitator, you could say, hey, when you're about to enter this space, like, I want you to take kind of an exaggerated photo of how you're feeling today. And if people are like, right, or if they're like, yeah, like that could be a really good indicator of just like where people are at in their profile picture itself.
That's a great idea.
And the waiting room, yeah, that's an interesting thing. You can also make the waiting room a little bit more of a tool in and of itself to like prep people or get them set up. Yeah, the Google Suite integration does, I think, work very similarly to Miro, but we're not going to use it today. Okay, so that I think covers almost all of the supplies I wanted to go over. There are, oh my goodness, we have activated another one, which I was not prepared for, which is a sound effect. And Chris mentioned there's cognitive overload of participants. I think that that is something to be aware of with this platform, that for some people, all of this could be really exciting and interesting. And for some people, they might be like, whoa, slow down, everybody. Like, I've been in the Zoom world and I'm not ready for this amount of emojis or sound effects. So I think that's just something to be like cautious of and thoughtful with. So I think that covers pretty much all the major points that I wanted to highlight of this idea of knowing your technology. There are some ways to usually hack the technology, like to give us like kind of more options as facilitators. And I think just the ability to know your technology and know your supplies, that is something that I think is really, really useful. Yeah, there was a couple, Anna Maria as helping me out. We've got timers and the spotlight view. So the idea that you can spotlight one person or share documents. Anna Maria is doing the spotlight right now. So putting me in the spotlight, I think also reduces that cognitive load for people, right? And it gives them a little less to focus on. So as facilitators, knowing your technology is one piece, and then knowing how to use it is a second piece. So I wanted to share a little bit of a story that Anna Maria kind of hinted at earlier around facilitator cards, and talk about why knowing your technology and knowing what you know how to facilitate is so important. So when a couple of years ago, I was running Train the Trainers, and I had been doing the same ones for 3 or 4 years, and I got an invite to do another with a group. And about a week before the Train the Trainer, I got off a call with them, and I realized they did not want the standard thing, but I didn't know what they wanted. And it was too late to really ask them. And I realized that I was going to have to plan an entire training on the fly, plan a 2-day Train the Trainer without an agenda. So me and my co-facilitator at the time, Sam, we wrote down all of the supplies that we were going to have with us, and that we could bring or they could provide. So we did that step one of like, know your supplies. And then the second thing we did, which completely transformed my facilitation practice, is that we wrote down everything we knew how to facilitate. We wrote it down on individual index cards of just like, what are the different processes that we know how to facilitate. So for example, with Spotlight online, you can do, you could just put somebody in the spotlight, but you could also do a process like putting someone in the hot seat and say, okay, we're going to have 5 minutes to like grill Anna Maria on all the things she loves about butter. And we're going to throw Anna Maria into the hot seat, right? That's a process that we know how to facilitate. Another way to use Spotlight would be, okay, we're going to put 4 people in the spotlight, and we're going to run a fishbowl exercise where those 4 people have a conversation and all the rest of us just watch and observe. And that's another like process or a how that we can use during our facilitations. Same, function in the technology, but a completely different way to use the technology or use the space. So me and Sam brain dumped all of the hows that we knew how to facilitate. So we were like, okay, hot seat, pair share, fish bowls. And we wrote all of those down on individual index cards. And we used those index cards then to actually facilitate the 2-day training, building our agenda as we went. Those index cards are what eventually became facilitator cards, so that we had all of those tools with us at all times. And what I want to do is I want to invite us back into the Miro to do this brain dump of what are all the like little processes that we know how to facilitate. So we are heading back into the Miro, and we've got another sticky note wall available to us. And I just want to invite you for 2 minutes to write down this idea of, to put 1 per sticky note. What is a process that you know how to facilitate, that you can do with any group and that you can use regardless of the content that you're facilitating? Grab a sticky note And it can be something really simple, like I mentioned, pair share, or it could be something more complicated like fishbowl or other processes. So I'm going to invite you back into the Miro to kind of brain dump those onto this board. And we'll see if we can fill the sticky notes. We've got 30 of us on this call. So let's see what we've got. All right. World Cafe. Yes, we've got some liberating structures right up here. Dot voting, pair share, challenge by choice, fill in the blank. Yeah, if you've put one down, feel free to keep going and add some more in. If you added one that is kind of like a meta category or a bigger category like icebreaker, if you can put in like a specific one that you might think underneath that, or a particular way you run icebreakers, that would be awesome. Okay. What I would love is if there's anybody who is reading some of these and wants to, and is thinking, I don't know what that one is, or that one is new to me. I would love if you wanted to hit that Q button and tell us which one you would like to hear more about. So if anybody sees one that they're curious about, hit the Q button on the left side of your butter with I have a question or I have a comment. All right. Yeah, Jocelyn, I see you.
Yeah. What is World Cafe?
Ooh, yeah. Whoever put World Cafe, would you be up for giving us a 1-minute version of it?
Yeah, totally. World Cafe is can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. World Cafe is a rotational brainstorming exercise. I usually do it with 3 tables, usually with a group of 9 to 15 people. But you can go bigger. You can have as many tables and as many people as you want. And each table is a different topic, and groups rotate from table to table. One person stays at the table as the groups rotate and acts as the table host and lets the next group know what the first group came up with. So you create this sort of additive brainstorming process with people engaging with different topics on top of previous thinking. So you get to sort of like build past a base.
Yep. Love it. Great summary of that, Bryn. Thank you. Yeah, World Cafe is something called a liberating, where I was introduced to it through Liberating Structures, and I can throw a link in there. They're very similar to, they're kind of this like, bigger process that you can use with a lot of different content. So that was a awesome summary. Ida, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I feel like I know what empathetic listening is in like life, but in a meeting, whoever put that, is there structure? Is that like an amount of time where you can't respond and you only listen? Like, what is that in a meeting tool?
Yeah. If the person who shared empathetic listening, is there a particular structure that you use around that? Or is that just like a suggestion for how people show up in the meeting?
I wrote down empathetic listening, and there is a structure. It's based on nonviolent communication, and it has to do, basically, it has to do with asking a difficult question, giving people time to think about them, and then they have a set amount of time to talk about it, uninterrupted. And if there's silence, you just sit in silence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't interrupt the other person's time. And then after that, you're invited to say back to them what you heard, non-judgmentally, just like trying to be as neutral as possible. And if you fail, you start over until you're able to do it.
Oh, I love that twist.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that twist. There's a process that I'm familiar with called echo dialogue, which seems like a little bit of a lower stakes process with that, where you just try to mirror back exactly what somebody said, like an echo. But I love that twist and that specificity. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we'll do one more. Infinity map. Is the person who put down infinity map up for sharing what that is? If not, does anyone else know what the infinity map is? Okay. All right. Any others that we didn't get to that folks want to throw out, since I promised one more clarity? You can either hit the Q button or throw it in the chat, which one you're curious about. Exit flip. All right, we've got exit flip. Anyone know which one, what exit flip is? Slip, I'm sorry. Exit slip. I know what exit slip is in case anyone doesn't want to share. But if anyone does, rather than me talking, I would love to hear your version of exit slip. Okay, I'm going to share. So exit slip to me is, the way I've used it is sometimes like on your way out, I want you to write one thing down that I'm going to collect on your way out. And you can use it in different ways to either create some accountability, like give me one thing that you want me to check in on in 6 weeks, and I'll follow up and I'll take that ticket kind of as you're leaving the door. Or it could be just like a reflection question that you're asking people to take with them on their way out. There's also the idea of kind of like they're taking it with them, where they're kind of taking like a little take home or a memento of their reflection, like in their, like a little slip of paper in their pocket. That's how I've done exit slip in the past. And a chat waterfall bonus. Chat waterfall, I would say, is when we all type in the chat, but we don't hit send until we do 3, 2, 1, and we hit all at once. And then it creates this kind of like waterfall of chats all at once. Okay. All right. So we have almost filled this board, which is epic. And we have all of these different ways that we can facilitate. So I will just invite us to take some of these new ideas that we've discussed out loud, but also that you're seeing on the board, to take that into our next session, or our next part of the session, where we're going to move into some small groups and some scenario work. So we're going to go ahead and close the Miro. So, and I'm going to take myself out of the spotlight. All right. So we've done some brainstorming around this idea of knowing our tech and knowing our tools. And now what I want to do is I want to put you all into a scenario where you're actually going to have to flex an agenda as facilitators and come up with a new way to facilitate. So here is what's going to happen. In a moment, we're going to put you into breakout rooms. And in your breakout rooms, you are going to be with your little co-facilitation team. And with your team, I'm going to give you a scenario that you're going to put your facilitator hats on for. I don't think I have my physical hat near me. Put your facilitator hats on, and you're going to figure out a new plan for this facilitation. So here is the scenario. You are facilitating a session with a group that needs to make a big decision. You thought going in that they were going to be ready to vote today on that big decision. And you're about 15 minutes into the call and you're like, they are not ready to vote. That is clear to me and probably to most people in the room. And you have 5 minutes to come up with a new plan for the rest of your 60-minute meeting. So for the next 60 minutes, you've done about 20 and you have another 60 to go. So you're going to take 5 minutes to come up with a new plan with knowing that this group is not ready to make this decision. That new plan, you want to figure out where is the group emotionally with what's already been discussed. What are the plans on the table? You want to know what information do we need to dig into to get more clear on the plans on the table? And then you want to narrow down, let's limit what plans are available to us so that next meeting we are ready to vote. Okay, you're going to come up with that agenda in about 5 minutes with your group. Here's how I'm going to task you to do that. So I'm going to share my screen to show you what you'll see when you're in your breakout rooms. So when we put you in your breakout rooms, Anna Maria is going to jump in there and open up the Miro board. And when that happens, this is where you'll be. Each of your breakout rooms is going to be named a fruit. So if you are the apple group, you are going to find the apple on our little fruit tray up here, and you're going to click the arrow that's to the right of that. And that's going to bring you to the Apple board. In this Apple board, we've got the plan that I just discussed, identify where the group is at emotionally, clarify the goals, and then identify and narrow down the list of options on the table. So you've got, that's your agenda flow. Now you need to figure out how are you going to facilitate that flow. I've got 4 facilitator cards that are available for you to use. So you could say, oh, I think we should start with minute papers and then we should do fill in the gap or whatever it is you want to do. Or if you want to bring in any of those ideas that we came up with just 10 minutes ago, what you'll do is you'll click this sticky note option and you can add your own personal sticky if you have a different process. Like if you're Bryn and you're like, I think World Cafe is perfect for this, then you could say, all right, I'm going to bring in World Cafe and we're going to use that to identify where the group is at, right? Just throwing out an example. So you can use, sorry, Apple, I gave you another idea. So you can use these facilitator cards that are to the right. All of them are just specific processes that might be good for this fit. Or you can use ideas that we came up with as a group. I'm going to give you like a minute or two to settle in to your breakout rooms. And then the 5-minute challenge will start. And I'll just invite you to get through as much agenda planning as you can in 5 minutes. Any questions about those directions? I am going to put the scenario once again into the chat so that you can have it as a reference, but that didn't work. Your specific, there it goes. There we go. Your specific kind of agenda that you're trying to come up with is written out on each one of those boards. Any questions about your challenge? Now's the time. Okay. All right. So you're going to be in breakout rooms. Anna Maria, are you almost set for those?
Yes. So we're going to be in breakout rooms of 3. You will find your fruit label at the top of your room. And I set a timer for 6 minutes, and just to account for that minute of settling in and me coming through each and every room to open the Miro board for you guys.
Can we move it to 7 just to make sure that
definitely can. Yes. Okay. There we go.
I think
all right.
5 is pushing it already. All right. When you come back, everyone, we will get to see what agendas you've come up with and your brand new plan for the meeting. Good luck with your team, and I'll catch you when you come back.
Okay, have fun.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. I know that might have been a hard stop, and especially if you're used to a 60-minute or 60-second timer and you got a 10, it probably came to an abrupt ending. So if you were like mid-thought, please know you can finish your thought in the chat. No one will know what you're saying except for your group, but they'll be like, I got you. And you can kind of finish your conversation there. I will start by saying, I know that for some people, the Miro learning curve was very high. And I apologize if that prevented you from getting into the weeds on the details of the conversation that I was hoping to. My bad on not necessarily doing more prep for the Miro side of it. What I'll have us do is, I know some people were able to, I'm looking at the board, and some groups have an entire agenda ready to go. So what I would love is if I'm going to screen share and be able to zoom in on a couple of boards. And if there is a person from that group who would be up for talking us through how you came up with your plan and kind of what your plan and your flow was, we can all learn from your agenda and get some ideas for what we could do. So that's what we're going to move into now. So I'm going to start with the Apple group. Is there someone from the Apple group who would be willing to talk us through your beautiful plan here? And maybe you can hit that Q button so we can know who you are. Apple group. Anyone down? I know there were folks in there. You have a whole agenda right here. Yes, Barbara. Go ahead, Barbara. If you are talking, we can't hear you because you are muted.
Okay, sorry. I feel like I've been over participating today. So if anyone from my group wants to, join and take the reins, feel free. But so what we did was each one of us read through one of the cards, one of the colors of the cards, and then we presented the one we thought was more appropriate to the rest of the group. And then we thought about how to facilitate it using Butter or online tools. So for the first one, the minute papers, we thought to use a butter pool so everyone can present their idea, and on Butter you can just like heart it so we can see the ones that resonate with the largest number of people.
Nice.
And then from then on, we went to using the subcommittees, and we thought to use the breakout rooms for that. We did not think of a debriefing activity because we thought we didn't have enough time for that. And then we moved on to the last part, which was we would do a dot voting first. So everyone had the opportunity to express their ideas, and then use the top three. And to do that, we can use Miro. People write on the sticky notes. And because we know that the voting system of Miro is a little bit confusing, we thought maybe they could just add emojis to the Post-its to make it simpler. Mm-hmm. And then because one of the participants felt like Miro was, whoa, we thought of Google Jamboard as a simpler options, or even Google Slides, or even doing it in the chat. And from then on, we would use vanishing options to narrow down the three that we've already narrow it down a little bit more, and be more democratic in the process. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Barbara. That's so cool. Also appreciate you sharing with us the process that your group did of the divide and conquer. Let's give a quick round of applause for Barbara for sharing that, and for the Apple group for their amazing agenda. ASL applause are awesome online because it is very visually dramatic. All right, Apple group, congrats on your full agenda. That was awesome. I would love to hear from let's see here, pear or orange, either pear or orange. If somebody would be up for hitting that Q button, if you're down to share from your group, I would love to highlight your work here. Someone from pear or orange, either. All right, Bryn. All right, Bryn, were you pear or orange?
Orange.
Orange. All right. Let's see your group's agenda here. Okay, talk us through it, Bryn.
All right, so I think for the first one, we thought that, the path we would take would depend on the participant group. If we were in a situation where the participants had hierarchical relationships to each other, we might do a declarative pairs exercise just to make it less vulnerable for people to, speak truth to power. But if it's a more sort of democratic or flat group, then we would do just sharing withholds with the whole group.
Awesome.
And then for clarifying thoughts on plans currently on the table, we decided to go with subcommittees. I think our thought there was that hot seat or fishbowl just lets you hear from one or a handful of people. And if the group isn't ready to vote, it's probably because they haven't done enough work to bring everyone on board and get buy-in from the whole team. So it seemed important to sort of break things down and get everyone involved. And then on the identifying and narrowing down list, we agreed that if we had lots of time and it were a perfect world, we would do an urgent versus important grid. And if in the likelier event that we had no time and needed to wrap up quickly, we would use dot voting.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Orange Group. Very, very cool. I love that you had enough time in the 8 minutes that we gave you to give yourself options. That was an impressive feat in your plan. You not only created a plan, you created like a multi-layered flow chart in that. So yes, applause for Bryn. You're getting some love from your group as well, Bryn, for being willing to speak out. So let's see. Did anybody have a plan that they felt was really different from those two? that kind of took a different direction or had a different kind of flow to it that they would want to share. Even if it was just a part of their plan, it doesn't have to be the full thing, but if the beginning was different or the end. Anybody got one they would be want to share, or a part of their conversation that they wanted to share? I'm seeing some unique ideas at the strawberry group. You've got sticky notes of your own. So yeah, Strawberry, would you like to tell us a little bit about your process? No pressure. I can just read what I'm seeing as well, but. Okay. All right. I'm hearing silence from Strawberry, which I'm going to guess is intentional. So what I was seeing in the Strawberry group is they've got this idea of listing expectations versus where the priorities are. And I thought that was really kind of genius, this idea of like, what did you expect this meeting to be able to get to? Or what did you expect us to be like? What did you expect of this group? And just kind of level setting with this idea of clarifying expectations off the top. I thought that was really creative. Okay, so we've got I've got some more questions for you about that process. So I would love to hear from some folks in the large group that we haven't heard from yet. And I would love you to just share, and I'm going to ask you to do a difficult thing, which is to put aside the technology challenges, but just to share about the process of doing that, of trying to come up with a plan on the fly. What was that process like with other people? What did you learn from that process? Either like, I don't think I would want to do this, or this is what I thought was really useful. It can be either like takeaways that were, I learned that this doesn't work, or I learned that this does work. Either of those, I would be really interested to hear. If you are up for sharing some of your takeaways just from like doing that process of what that process taught you, I would love you to hit that Q button or to share in the chat. But I would love to get some new voices into the space and hear kind of what did you learn from doing that process? Okay, Sandy, I see a comment here. And Sandy, if you're up for sharing a little bit more, I would love to hear a little bit more. It's helpful to have the cards there to choose from. It speaks to the benefits of planning for contingency ahead of time. Yeah, so that idea of just like, I have these things ready to go that I know I can facilitate ahead of time, that was really helpful. Sandy, are you up for saying a little bit more about that and how that, what you kind of realized from that?
I'm happy to, but I don't know that I have much more to add, actually. Just, you know, our group is one that struggled to get everyone to the right place in a timely fashion. And so, so then, you know, once we finally got there, we were like, hey, here's some cards. Let's use, this one looks like a great idea. And so we just like slid them over real quick. And so, you know, just kind of had me thinking, when you only have 5 minutes, you know, not having to go through every tool in your tool bag to find the one that fits, but having some kind of set aside ahead of time. Yeah. So
yep.
Prepare for the unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. I think that idea, and this is something like really gets me into a specific thing that I think about now with flexibility, is to prepare over plan, to like prepare, have a list of things, like know what the supplies are that you have available, know what the things that you know how to do are, and have those prepared, but not necessarily in a plan. You can just have a little pile of index cards or sticky notes or facilitator cards, whatever it is, that you're like, I know that those are there if I need them, and I don't need to actually make a plan with them. I can do that in 5 minutes as long as I am prepared to look and access those things ahead of time. So I appreciate what you're speaking to there, Sandy. Yeah, Rebecca, I see you as well.
Yeah, our group was really close-knit from the beginning. And so when one of us had technology issues, the other ones were like, oh no, like, let's try to help everybody get to be in the same place. And I felt like I almost had an unfair advantage because I have some like physical cards in front of me. And I just kept thinking, oh, if we all had these physical cards in front of us, then we could be, you know, kind of like mixing and matching and doing it ourselves on our end. And so I thought that was really cool. And I love I love the way that you guys set up the Miro board with the digital cards also, because once you get to that space, you could kind of look at those options and then almost eliminate the options that you didn't want or focus in on the options that you did want. And it made it really easy instead of just racking your brain for, okay, what do I do next? It kind of felt like you had a structure that was there to draw from, that if you just arranged it in the right way, you could get to where you wanted to go.
Okay, awesome. So like the idea of like the puzzle pieces are there, we just need to put them in the right order, but not that we need to invent the puzzle pieces in the moment. Yeah. Okay, Ida, you just said I never co-facilitated and I learned that I really liked it. I don't know if you want to say more, but I'm so fascinated by the idea that like I just threw you in a breakout room and that was the first time that you've like had a co-facilitator trying to plan with you. And I'd love to hear more about that if you're down.
Yeah, sorry, my computer is being really slow right now. But yeah, I loved. So other people are putting things in the chat about stuff, their co-facilitators and considerations that came up that they wouldn't have thought of. And that was the whole thing for me. It was clear that me and John, who was in my breakout room with me, came from very different meeting contexts. So we had very different ideas of what was going to be a problem that needed solving. And actually having both of those sets of problems in our minds helped us reach something that I think was much stronger together.
Awesome. That's so cool. So yeah, the idea of what are the things you're optimizing for and what are the things you're paying attention to as a facilitator? Sometimes we think like those are just what everybody is paying attention to, but it sounds like for both of you, there are very specific things that you were kind of optimizing for or looking at, and that created a lot of like creativity or kind of like new possibilities for both of you to see it in a different way. Yeah, I think that when it comes to co-facilitation, like, and you're planning on the fly, when you have those 5 minutes, like a 5-minute break to make a new plan, it can be really generative to have really different perspectives. And it can also be really like, it can feel like a huge barrier when you're like, oh, we have so much to get on the same page about in those 5 minutes. So I'm glad for you. It felt like, oh, this is actually really generative rather than like, we aren't even speaking the same language. And so that's making this really challenging because I think it can go both ways. Rachel said, I like the idea of grouping activities or options according to the potential needs of the group. Would you say more about that, Rachel?
Yeah, I think for me, I really liked the structure of like, okay, people are coming from different points of view. So what are some activities to identify that and sort of flesh that out, like bring some space for that. And then, you know, the sort of the goal-oriented activities, for whatever reason, I've never sort of prepared, not planned, but prepared my facilitation in that way. Like, what if I have options, but they haven't necessarily been tied to the group needs or the group goals, potential goals. And so I really, really liked having that lens of kind of, okay, we get there and they're not on the same page. We get there and people are angry about something else. You know, what things that can happen. Like if you come into in the middle of a meeting to facilitate, they've already discussed something and you're not sure what that is, but it becomes clear that it's influencing everything that's happening, to have some ways to kind of tease that out. So I just really, I liked that framing of it a lot. So.
Awesome. I think that that's something that to me has really like unlocked a lot of potential, is just seeing that, because I think sometimes facilitation can feel like this enormous ecosystem where you're just like, I don't know, there's endless ways to do that, right? And it can just feel like you have all of these options, and actually categorizing those options and being like, well, these are good to get people talking, and these are good to brainstorm, and these are good when we're stuck, and these are good decision-making tools, right? To actually put those into categories and to even like put just your favorite processes, right? If you're like, I have, 10 go-to processes, but even just to do that, to categorize them in particular ways, that was a game changer for me too. Like when I started seeing like, okay, but these are all really good at surfacing emotions, and these are actually not as good at that. They're better at making decisions or like, getting people into the nitty-gritty conversation. As soon as I started doing that, I was like, well, this is, now I can make that decision so much faster once I know what the meta problem is, right? Not like the specific problem, but that meta problem.
Totally agree. Love it.
Yeah. It totally changed things for me. So we have about 20 minutes left. And what I wanted to do was just open up for some general Q&A. And this can be Q&A on like anything that we just haven't talked about at all. You all showed up to a session today about flexible facilitation, and I want to spend the next 10 minutes just allowing us to go wherever whatever your curiosity is piquing. So I'm going to open up a poll, and I'm going to give us 1 minute to quote, answer the poll. Your answer is, what question do you have? Like, any and all questions are welcome. So, and those can be about flexible facilitation. They can be about butter. They can be about anything that we've talked about today. And I'll just invite you to throw a question into the poll. And if you're like, I don't have a question, then I'll just invite you to type that in, because once you hit enter, you'll be able to see other people's questions and you can heart the ones that maybe resonate or connect with you. So I'll just invite everybody to do that for the next minute, and then we'll answer as many as we can in the next 10. But yeah, take 30 seconds to think and 30 seconds to type. Okay, I'm going to answer a few of these questions, and then one of the most popular questions is, can we hear from other people? So I'm going to take like 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm going to give the floor over to other folks. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let's see. Questions are still coming in, but I'm going to start answering them. So we've got one. Where did it go? We have one about co-facilitation that I now can't find. There we go. How do you get the same flexibility with a co-facilitator if you don't have 5 minutes to come up with a new plan together? How do you get on the same page in the midst of a session? Okay, so this is actually a question that I will give thoughts on, but I will also invite people to share in the chat. Getting yourself 5 minutes to make a new plan is sometimes you have to make that happen. You have to give yourself those 5 minutes. There can be times where I think a lot of people are afraid to just turn to their co-facilitator and say, I have a plan or I have an idea and this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? I think you can do that when you have a high degree of trust and you have an established relationship with that person. I think that's totally okay to do when you have those established relationships. I think if it's a new person though, I would be very reticent to do that. And instead, I would want to get myself 5 minutes. So here's my hack for getting yourself 5 minutes. Any activity that is done individually or in pairs, you can use to just get yourself 5 minutes. So if you're like, I'm just going to ask everybody to journal for the next 2 or 3 minutes about how we're feeling about how things have been going today or about our process so far. It can be anything. It doesn't actually need to be relevant. You need to make it relevant so that they'll do it. But it doesn't actually have to be information that you're then going to use, but just to give yourself some time. And what I would do is throw them off into their own breakout room so that you can have a conversation here. Marcy's got a really simple, great answer, which is give everybody a 5-minute break. Say, you know what? I know we're only 20 minutes in, but I think that we should just take a 5-minute stretch break, grab a drink, grab some coffee, go to the bathroom. We'll come right back. But until then, I'm going to just send us off into breakout rooms so that we're just all in our own space. And then we're going to bring everybody back at the end of those 5 minutes. I think that is a secret trick that I would use every time to get 5 minutes alone with my co. I think that's really important. Let's see. I'm going to do 1 or 2 more and then we'll hear from other people. Let's see. Managing time and time-related expectations. What are some graceful ways to address this common issue? I get stressed when I see we're short on time, even when I know the conversation is important enough to take more time. So one of my tips is to not say we're short on time unless you're actually moving people unless you're saying we're short on time, so I'm going to give us 2 more minutes to have this conversation and then we're going to move. But so often I see facilitators just say so we're running late, and then the anxiety of running late is just kind of passed off to their group. So that's something I would say is if you're going to bring attention to the time, then what you want to do is make that relevant and give a time boxed boundary. The other thing is to prepare ahead of time what you're willing to cut. So I usually have something in the latter half of my agenda that I am willing to cut, and I know that that's the one on the chopping block ahead of time. So knowing that that's the one that's going to flex and it's not your wrap up and it's not the most essential like piece, that's something that I think reduces my anxiety, knowing that like, okay, this is the one that can, I think of it kind of like an accordion. This is the one that can get squished and we can do it as a minute paper, or we can do it in pairs, or it's something that you can expand and something that can be done as like a small group conversation for a longer period of time. I think that one can be really helpful, but having that accordion activity or activities that you're willing to cut identified ahead of time, that can be really crucial. Okay. All of these questions are going to save. And so I'm going to go through any of the questions that we didn't get to and do my best to answer them after the session. Am I right in saying that, Anna Maria, that these are going to save? I'm going to have access to all that information later.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. Because what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 5 minutes giving you the floor. So what I would love to know, because we had some people who were like, I'm pretty good at this right at the beginning of the session. Like I have some confidence and comfortability. I never know if that's a word, with this idea of flexing at the beginning of the session. So here's my question to you. If you have something that you feel like this was the thing that allowed me to feel more flexible in my facilitation, like this is something that I use, or a trick or a hack, just a tiny teach that you want to share with this group, I would love you to hit the Q button and say, I have a comment, and I would love to hear from a few folks in the next few minutes of just like, what is your trick or hack or tiny teach around this idea of flexibility? I know we have wisdom in the room, because otherwise you would not have given yourself a 4 or a 5. So if you were one of those folks right at the beginning, I will invite you. What is one of your tricks, hacks, or tiny teaches that you can share with the group? Who's up for taking the stage? Or we can meditate, those are the options. Doesn't have to be a big one. It can be little. Yes, Rachel. We're going to go Rachel and then Sandy.
Mine is just having like plan B. So I create the agenda, I put everything together. And then I don't know if it's because I'm from the Midwest or what my issue is, but I'm so time obsessed. It's like an issue, but then I'll just have like, hey, extra 5 minutes, extra 10 minutes, extra 20 minutes. And so like, I love your accordion idea, because that's kind of, it's like, oh, pull that one down, or nope, we're going to do that one differently. So that's how I feel confident. Like, okay, we can switch it up. We can shorten and lengthen.
Yep. I think what's awesome about plan Bs is that for me, they often help regardless if I use them or not. Just having them helps me feel confident that I can flex, and therefore more willing to flex. But like, even if I don't use them, right? It's just knowing that they're there. All right, Sandy.
Yeah. Mine is, I guess, more of a tiny teach. One of the things that has been the most helpful to me is actually just letting go of my ego about the whole thing, and remembering that it's not about me, and just giving up some control. And so just saying, hey, y'all, I'm not sure what we should do next. And like asking the group what interests them, or, what would feel good to them, or admitting when I mess up. Hey, I really thought we could do this. I thought we had time for this. We don't have time for this. That's on me. And, just like letting go of the idea that I have to get it all right to make the day go well. And instead deciding to model a little vulnerability and let them know by my actions that it's okay to make mistakes sometimes. And that sometimes we do just change because things aren't working out. So.
I love that. Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I loved in what you said is just admitting when you get something wrong. And I think that's something that a lot of people are hesitant to do. And I don't think it's to the degree of like, I have no idea what to do here, group, that can bring some anxiety up for people. But saying to I thought we had time to do this thing, and I'm realizing to actually give it the amount of time that I want to, I think we would need more than we have. So I'm going to change the rules of the game, right? Like 5 minutes into it, I'm going to change the rules of this chunk, and we're going to do it this way instead. Or does anybody have an idea of how we can do this well, but in 10 minutes? I think that idea, and Barbara also mentioned this in the chat, of kind of bringing people into that process and allowing there to be some wisdom and input from the group within a container, right? Where you're like, I want an idea, we can do in 10 minutes. Like once you give them those kind of parameters, that people can help you out in that way. And I think sometimes people are scared to admit like, this isn't going well, but I think it's really, really crucial that when we're facilitating to not allow that to be the only reason we don't change things up, that we're unwilling to be like, call in an audible, we need to go in a different direction. To me, taking the blame is the easy, like, it's not that you guys can't share the floor, it's that I am not doing a good enough job of making that happen. So we need to switch it up, right? Like taking that responsibility, I think is really important. Marcy.
Yeah, I just want to say, I realize this is not possible for everybody, but I have co-facilitated most of my time with adults with a partner. And we just talked about some of the values of co-facilitating, and I have to say it's some of the most rewarding work I've done. So not only is it great for the having to pivot and having to make last minute or quick decisions, if you have a trusted partner and you know that conferring with that person is going to be fruitful quickly, it's incredibly gratifying and to look at for moral support once you've made the change. And just two heads are better than one. So when you've got a trusted partner, it goes a long, long way, in addition to all the advantages that have been mentioned already for those of you who were doing that for the first time.
Yeah, I think you're so right about that, that pivoting by yourself is often like you don't have somebody to necessarily bounce ideas off of, and you don't have to get approval, but also like you can't prep for those things. You can't like be like, hey, can you make this happen real quick while I finish this activity? That co-facilitation magic and that ability to like really work with somebody in those moments is so helpful. So it is harder, I think, sometimes to pivot by yourself because there just isn't that buffer of someone else can do something and someone else can actually still be paying attention to the group. So especially somebody mentioned like, can you do all of this virtually without people? I think you can. It's just, I think, a higher, it takes more preparation and it takes a little less, and you really have to know the technology. Like I'm very grateful for Anna Maria being here and helping me today because I don't know butter as well as I know other pieces of technology. So I think that learning curve, giving yourself that buffer and that person to help you out is really, really important. Also, if you are a time-obsessed Midwesterner or in general, Bryn's got an idea for you in the chat around that. Okay. Love the wisdom of the crowd on those tips. I think those are all really important. We have a few minutes left, and what I would love to do is I'm going to do a real short takeaway breakout session. So I'm going to throw you back into breakout rooms. They're going to be different breakout rooms. They're going to be random. And what I would like you to do is to just share two things. One thing that you learned from this session and one thing that you are still wondering about pivoting and facilitation. So one thing that you learned and one thing that you are still wondering. So I'm going to give you like 3 minutes in your breakout rooms of ideally 3. If you're in a smaller breakout room, then you get a little bit longer to chat. And then we're going to bring you back just to close out. But we're just going to hear for everybody one thing you learned and one thing that you are still wondering. Anna, you open up those breakout rooms. Okay.
Yes,
see you
absolutely.
all soon. Okay, everybody's coming back. Boom. Welcome back. Okay, I'm going to continue to extend that invitation that if you got cut off or you want to say thank you to your partner and you didn't get to, feel free to throw some love in the chat for them. While you're over there in chat, I'm going to ask you one more question for our session today. And that would be, if somebody had to leave midway through or they signed up for the session and they were not able to come, I would love if they connected with you and they were like, oh, well, what's one thing you learned today from the session? What would you tell them? Take 30 seconds and type one thing that you learned from the session today that you would share with somebody who wasn't able to attend. All right, that I love that many of you are typing small books over there. So go ahead and hit send with your chat, with your idea as we wrap up, because I don't want to keep you after unless you want to be kept after, and then you can keep yourself. Just to wrap up, I'll say thank you so much for joining me on this experiment today, joining me for my first session in Butter. It was really fun. I really enjoyed getting to do this with all of you. If you please look out for an email from Anna Maria in the next 2 days with a link to the recording, but also additional resources. I will also be throwing additional resources into that email. I've written a little bit about this subject before, and so there are lots of ways that you can keep learning about it. If you are interested in learning more about facilitator cards, which are, as Rebecca mentioned, physical objects in real space, I'm going to throw a link into the chat right now, which hopefully will work. Yes, there it goes. If you use that link to get yourself facilitator cards by the end of the week, you can get 10% off of your order. And that's just for people who showed up today. That's not going in the resources. So that's just for you for being here. If you got to run, I so appreciate your time. And if you want to hang out for additional questions, I'm going to stick around for a bit. But otherwise, until our paths cross again, everyone, happy facilitating.